Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel and welcome to my father, James.
Hello.
So, you may recall at the end of last year I did a video with my mum all about parenting, and then we were in the pub over Christmas.
We were.
And you were like, I've never been on your channel, like mum's been on your channel loads.
No, I was really annoyed and I suddenly realised I needed to be on your channel.
Yeah, I didn't realise I had this bias.
I think it's sexism.
Okay,
Basically.
we will get into that.
Yeah.
So I asked my followers on Instagram if they'd be interested in hearing from my dad about parenting, gender dynamics, parenting me, being a grandparent, like all of that kind of stuff. And overwhelmingly people were like, yes.
That's good, because if they'd said no...
And then I still brought you on.
Yeah, that wouldn't be so good.
The way I'm going to do this, I've got a few questions that I asked Mum as well that I will pose to you. There is a baby here. If you hear baby noises, Rowan is in the background. And then we've got some more specific questions for you.
Yeah, great.
From my patrons. Yay!
Lovely.
First up, grandparenting from a distance. What does that look like? Positives and negatives.
First thing easy to say is that there's very few negatives for us, for myself and for Debbie.
Other than you don't get to see him all the time.
But that's the negative.
Yeah.
Is that the positives, it's been extraordinary, and I don't think I would have ever quite realised how wonderful it was going to be. And we are ridiculously in love with him and excited by the whole prospect of the next however many years. I think the distance is hard because you want to get to know a child and to have some sort of routine with him.
Yeah.
And the idea of seeing him for a couple of hours every few days rather than intensely for 48 hours every 3 or 4 weeks, that would be better rhythm. But still, that's a minor thing.
I always had long distance relationships with my grandparents.
Exactly. So that's just purely selfish, that we just want to see him more. But it's been wonderful, and seeing the next generation in that sort of emotional sense of another generation arriving in our family has just been extraordinary.
Yeah, Rowan is the first grandchild and great-grandchild on both mine and Dan's sides, so he is getting a lot of attention at the moment.
The next one.
Who?
Yeah.
How do you manage wanting to share your parenting wisdom, but also let me and Dan make our own parenting choices?
We don't. You know, whether we have any wisdom or not is a moot point. I don't know if we do have any wisdom. We certainly have experience. And
Two different things.
Two different things. I was always a bit suspicious of those people who had kids who had some sort of system or had a book that they followed.
Right, yeah.
So there's all these people, oh, we're following the method. Mum and I were much more like, oh, let's play it by ear. Let's see how it goes.
Yeah, Dan and I are a bit like that, I think, as well.
And therefore, we have a sort of don't share that rule. And I don't think either of us have had to grit our teeth and think, oh, they're doing it wrong. So it's actually been quite easy on that basis.
Love that. What has been something about being a grandparent that has surprised you?
Seeing you and Dan with a child.
Just surprising.
It's just surprising because you have no idea how your own children are going to be with kids. I know you like kids, and I've seen you with other small people over the years, but I don't think I quite realised how brilliant parents that you're going to be. Maybe that sounds like I thought you might be a bit shit. But no, so I think that's been extraordinary. And then just being with another human being who's part of your family. Yeah. It's just beautiful.
He's lovely. So we asked Mum about what Jewish traditions she was excited about passing on to Rowan. You are not Jewish. So one of my patrons wanted to know, how did he feel about raising his kids Jewish, me and Leah? Because your situation, I guess, is similar to Dan's.
I was always really clear that you were going to be Jewish with Mum, and it's so important for Mum, her Jewish identity.
Yeah.
I have a really strong relationship with my background and my family. And therefore, we've always done sort of Christmas traditions, stockings and things like that. She still has my stocking.
Well, it's Rowan's now.
And it's Rowan's stocking.
It was Dad's stocking, then mine, and now it's Rowan's.
So I think that's nice. There's something really particular about relationship with your great-grandma, Debbie's grandma, and knowing that we had a person who had a German accent in the family, and that sense of history and that sense of the importance of maintaining a Jewish identity that was so strong. And I felt really proud that you and Leah became and like being Jewish.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important for Debbie, but I think it's really important for me too.
That's nice. We call you the honorary Jew as well.
Yeah.
So it's like with the kippah as well.
I wear a kippah. I mumble Hebrew at the events.
Yeah. Exactly. This is an interesting one because I don't really know much about this. How did his dad's parenting of him affect the way he parented you? And was there anything that he wanted to do differently or similarly?
That's a really good question for me because my dad was a much older dad.
Yeah.
So he was 48 when I was born.
And you were 25 when I was born.
And I was 25 when Hannah was born.
Yeah.
So one clear thing is that I wanted to be a young dad because my dad was an older dad.
Mm-hmm.
So there was something about being a young, active, involved dad.
Like physically as well.
Physically there. Now that feels a little bit like a criticism of my dad. My dad was a lovely, lovely man.
But also, like, he was in the war, so like
And he was
everything
in
could
the
have
war.
happened later for
He was
him.
an older man. There were different sort of traditions, and he was probably less physically involved. And therefore, I knew I wanted to be more physically involved, sort of in the day to day.
Yeah, that is something I remember. And actually, I was trying to do it with Rowan the other day. I was like, is he old enough for this yet? You remember when we used to do angels? And you would
Yes.
put your feet on our bellies and then lift us all the way up. I attempted, his belly's not quite big enough yet.
I can
but
remember
I can't wait to do that.
one of you wearing a tutu whilst doing it, in a pink tutu flying above the thing. So that's fantastic.
Good. Yeah. I just remembered that the other day when I was like, oh, wait, hang on, could I do this with him? No, not yet.
I think, my dad was a very loving person, but he was also older and slightly distant.
Yeah.
And I knew I didn't want that.
Has he counteracted the praise he's received for just simply being a parent and doing the bare minimum? What was your experience with that when me and Leah were younger?
This is one of my big bugbears.
Yeah.
The isn't he good?
Yeah.
And I used to get that. It's like just being there. Mm-hmm. So if I dared to take one of you in a pram to what would be called a mothers and babies group, they would rarely say parent and toddler group. It was probably a mums and toddlers group. I turn up and there is a cooing that suddenly comes. Ooh,
isn't he good?
So even though it's funny, just doing the bare minimum, changing a nappy, I got praise for.
Yeah.
And I just think,
Wish I got like a round of applause every time I changed nothing.
So I sort of think there's something really important about men resisting that and just going, I'm just doing my job. It's like when a man cooks a meal and everyone goes, oh, it's amazing. And then a woman cooks a meal and they go, thank you for the meal.
Or not even that.
Or not even that. So with childcare, it's like, woof, even more so.
Yeah, I went to a baby sensory class recently and there was one dad there. And it is interesting because you are in these spaces where I imagine like being a dad coming into that space must be quite like nerve-wracking because you're like, do I belong here as well? Like there's a bit of that.
Yeah.
And I don't know, it's just like, well, who is supported to take time off with their kid by the state?
Absolutely. One of the important things for me is the idea of the word parent rather than mother and father. And so we have parenting groups and therefore all parents should be welcome and it shouldn't be a surprise, but it still is, sadly.
What was the thing that you said in the pub about the word fathering?
Yeah.
This is really funny.
Well, because
it's interesting.
It's because if you say mothering, people have a certain idea of what that means as an adjective.
Verb. Yeah, to
mother. But to father has this awful sense that I've been fathering children all over Europe.
To father means to donate your sperm.
Yeah, it means to procreate. It means to sort of drop children randomly in places. So fathering has no sense of care in it.
Yeah.
Oh.
Hiya! You did.
He agrees with that.
Did you get any comments? Do you remember any from when me and Leah were little?
Yeah, I mean, it was always this sense of me getting more attention, particularly when I was by myself with you.
Yeah.
So I always would get more attention and it would be seen as either, wow, isn't he good? Or people would step in to help me out. So it's just
because there's the trope of the really low bar, you barely have to do anything, you get all this praise. But then there's also the trope of incompetent.
It's either, wow, isn't he amazing? How cute. You got lots of sort of, oh my God, you're so cute with your children. Or you must be incompetent, save those children from this man.
Oh my God, yeah.
And so people would sort of go, I'll do that for you. Oh, and it's like, no, I can manage my children, but you don't know how to strap them in.
It's interesting as well because then on the flip side of that, there's the trope of the super mum who does everything by herself and managing the household and the kids and also looking after her husband.
So don't help, so you don't get any help.
She doesn't need any help because she's a super mum.
Yeah.
And actually the super mum is there drowning.
Please, change his nappy.
Yeah, somebody help me. This is an interesting question. Does he think he parented his daughters differently than he might have parented sons?
This is really interesting.
What do you think?
Obviously, because I didn't have sons, so I don't have any empirical evidence.
No, but you have lots of honorary sons.
I have lots of honorary sons, and I have godsons, and I used to coach a football team which was largely boys.
Were there any girls on the team?
At the beginning, there was. Yeah.
And then as soon as they hit puberty.
And there was a rule at that time, a terrible FA rule, that at a certain age, when I was doing it, that the girl had to leave. They've changed that now, thank God. I think there's a certain physical play, but I think I did that with both of you. Maybe that feels like a more boysy type of play.
Yeah.
But I think that's just sex.
A bit rougher.
I think it's sort of nonsense. It's slightly nonsense, particularly Leah, probably. You were more self-contained.
Leah was feral.
Leah liked being thrown around the room.
Yeah.
Whereas you would like...
I would sit there and do my jigsaw.
You would like a jigsaw. So there was a different style of play.
Yeah.
And if Leah had been a boy and you'd been a girl, everyone would have gone, oh, he's such a boy, and oh, you're such a girl. Which, because I had two, one was who was more physical and you were more cerebral, then that shows it's nonsense that one was more boysy and one's more girlsy. So, yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, it's interesting seeing like the amount of like your godson. But do you have another godson? I know one of them.
I sort of got two godsons.
Okay. And then like the football team, and then the mentoring that you do.
Yeah, I mentor kids who've got sort of special educational needs.
Yeah.
Sort of ADHD, autistic, and things like that.
Yeah.
And that, well, ADHD requires a lot of running around.
Okay, yeah. But yeah, it's interesting to see, like, since me and Leah have become adults and like left home, you've still very much been involved in like other children's lives, and also the parents as well, and like helping them out and stuff.
Yeah, I like small people.
Like small people. Yeah. I'm curious, because I don't think I ever asked you this, but like, what was your paternity leave situation like when me and Leah were born?
It's interesting thinking about this, because I suddenly realised that it was really, really
long ago
and precarious, because I was 25.
Yeah.
It was 1992, and I was running an organisation, but I was actually freelance.
Right.
I took what I could, not financially. He laughed at that. There was a sort of financial, not what I could take as much as I wanted because I was in charge.
Yeah.
But actually there was a sort of financial limit to what I could take.
It's kind of similar to my situation then, yeah.
So I had to go back. But I know I took time off almost immediately.
Yeah.
I mean, around the time of the birth, Mum took quite a few days to get you out in the world. And I was
not as long as I took to get Rowan out.
Yeah. But yeah, nothing state orientated and nothing given.
Do you think it was easier though? Because Mum had a full-time job with then, so she got maternity leave and she was the primary carer because she was breastfeeding. Because Dan and I have often said like, oh, wouldn't it have been so much easier if I'd have been the person who had like the normal job and got statutory maternity leave and could take like a whole 9 months to a year off, and he was the freelancer, and then it meant that he could be
more flexible.
Yeah.
I think my flexibility, and also because I went from that job a few years later to working for a university, they've been always great in terms of flexibility, late starts, early, coming back early. Interestingly, Mum was working for a charity at that time, and when she asked for maternity leave, they went, oh, we've never had anyone ask that before.
Wow.
And then once they agreed to it, I won't say the name of the charity, they went, please don't tell anyone. Please don't tell anyone.
But there was statutory maternity leave at that point.
Like... She had to, and this was a charity that helped people with their rights to things like this. And they then told her not to tell anyone else that they'd given her that deal. That was early 90s, when even with statutory, there was a real failure to support women to have babies and then also get back into work afterwards.
Wow, I didn't know that. Interesting. Yeah. I guess, is there anything else that you would want to share about parenting, grandparenting, the gender stuff as well?
We sort of talked about mother and the words mother and father.
Yeah.
And I've always been really pleased that in English we have the word parent.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Because in a lot of other languages, there isn't a word that means parenting. There is only fathering and mothering.
Right, yeah.
And parents, the word for parents in many other languages is gendered.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, in most romantic languages, there'll either be like an E on the end or not. And
it means fathers, plural.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
And so parents is a really good word that we need to use more.
Yeah.
So that to say, oh, she's a really good mother, she's a really good parent, and they, he or she are really good parents.
Yeah.
I think we've got this gender neutral word and we should use it. I think it's really important as they get older is that there are many spaces that are for children which are single gendered, which can be a really good thing. But it's like if they only meet women as their nursery nurse, their teachers, there's a
This is what I love. At Rowan's Childminders, there's men and women.
See, that's great.
Looking after him and stuff, which I really like.
And you want diverse communities of adults looking after children.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Well, Dad, thank you.
Been great to be here.
Thank you for being a great dad and a great granddad.
Granddad, not a great granddad yet.
Oh yeah, no, not a great granddad. Jesus. No. Thank you all for watching, and thanks to my patrons for sending some of those questions. And I hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks very much.
Thanks for inviting me. Great to be here.
Bye-bye.
Bye.